Thank you, thank you, thank you. And welcome everybody to the third installment of X-Bound Special Miniseries on Amazon Pilots. That's series pilots for potential series that could air via the Amazon Instant Video. My name is Marcus Shadow. I'll be your host for this one. Oh, thank you very much. And And of course, joining me for this look at our third feature, we have Chris the Mole.
And thank you.
And the walking encyclopedia himself, James Phoenix.
Thank you, thank you.
Now, before we kick this off, I would like to announce that the three of us have decided to make this an ongoing series because Amazon does 2 rounds of pilots per year. So every time they release new pilots, we'll be taking a look at them, and it's usually in bunches of 5. And Chris the Mole has said that usually they release the pilots around January-ish, and then around now.
I think
So
it was around January.
look
It
for
might
that.
be off.
Yeah.
If we do, if we do next time, it wouldn't be under special. It'd probably be just under X-Pound Amazon Pilots.
Or something. Yeah, well, we haven't come up with a name for it yet, but we will, since it's going to be a recurring thing here. If any of you, our listeners, have any ideas for show titles, feel free to drop us a line, and we'll take a look at them. Because, hey, input's always good. But, yes, this week's series pilot that we're taking a look at is Hysteria. Now, I'm not very good at explaining this stuff, and Jim's looked this up. So, Jim, why don't you tell the good folks at home what this series is all about?
I'd be happy to, Marcus. This particular series, called Hysteria, is a suspense thriller focused around... I have forgotten the name of the actress, and I feel terrible about this now. Crap.
Do you remember the character?
Live, people.
The actress.
Mina Suvari's character.
There you go.
There you go. And she is a doctor, and she is called back from Houston to her hometown of Austin, Texas, because of an outbreak of a strange illness. The illness in question is mentioned as being a legitimately diagnosed in real-life illness that is out there in the world. And it's an illness where basically you suffer physical symptoms of mental and psychological stress. There is a official name for it. I cannot remember the name of it off the top of my head.
However, it's also worth mentioning the way they get it is not.
No, the way they get
accurate.
it is not accurate at all. Generally speaking, this happens with a large group of people who all experience or who all share the experience of a particular traumatic event. It's been known to happen in groups of war veterans, for example, seeing horrific things. Groups of it's been known in a couple of groups of school children when certain things happen at their schools, things like that. It's not all that frequently that it happens.
Groups of people that went to see Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Ha! Where's the friggin'... There we go. Anyway. So, yes, as I was mentioned, Mina Suvari is a doctor who is called back to Austin to investigate this by a doctor friend of hers that works at the local Austin hospital, who, upon speaking of this, the situation happens that a young group of high school girls who are on a dance team together go to this late-night sort of rave party at the abandoned snow globe factory, and basically, after some weird stuff happens, one of the young girls starts convulsing and having symptoms, and then slowly all the girls start developing a similar thing over the course of the next couple of days. And basically, Mina Suvari is called back into town to investigate this because they were similar, and something similar happened years ago when she was that age in the same town, and it ended in the death of her sister. So she has a personal interest in researching this type of disorder, which she has thoroughly researched. So it's sort of the suspense of, okay, they're trying to turn it into a sort of a pandemic thriller, if you will, like, oh, the disease is spreading. Can they stop it? Except instead of a disease, it's more of just a disorder that happens and that is completely preventable with the right, or treatable rather, with the right medications. Once you calm the person down and remove the stimuli, they're usually okay. And in this case, they decided to tie it into our whole current obsession with social media in the world today. And said, oh, well, anybody who sees the event on their social media, you don't need to really know someone to feel their pain and to feel that empathy, which is going to trigger symptoms in you, and that's how it's spreading to people over social media, which is a little bullshit. So this particular pilot came in at about 52 minutes, 52 minutes, sorry, 52 minutes. And I'll just start here. Overall, I feel like this was not that good.
No.
What I said to Marcus and I watched it together, and what I said to Marcus after we watched it is it felt like they were trying to build up. They were trying to build a series. They had a series that was built on a lot of hype and hoopla about something that wasn't really that serious. And it was like, okay, I get what you're trying to do here, but you couldn't have picked something a little more, actually life-threatening or a little less stupid.
You see, I actually strongly disagree with that.
Okay.
I think everything about it is shit, like the acting and stuff. However, the main premise, what they've done is great social commentary on how nowadays everyone shares every aspect of their life across all medium, and everyone shares all these viral videos, and everyone's like, oh my god, I watched my friend's wedding online, or I just read their Facebook comments. I'm literally their friend. I'm literally linked into them, and they're showing that, okay, maybe this has implications then, because if you're that tied into them, then something that can affect the group like that would affect you if you all saw the same thing and you were all sharing within the experience, because you're so wrapped up within the confines of how our world now works. It's a brilliant it's brilliant social commentary, and it's a brilliant premise. It's just executed badly.
Yeah, Mole makes a valid point, because now that he mentions that, in society today, with how connected we are through the internet and stuff, it's entirely believable that someone could get emotionally and mentally connected with someone they've never physically met. I mean, we're a prime example of that. We have never met, but we consider each other friends.
We do.
Ha!
Well, fuck you.
You weren't supposed to tell him that, Mole.
Oh, sorry. I consider Jim friends. That's not better if I just say just Jim.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's
just to so just to pop over a second, I did check it here. It is conversion disorder, is the disorder that they use for the purpose of the show, and specifically the masked psychogenic illness version of the disorder, in which it is passed from person to person, and a whole lot of people get it at once.
Fair enough,
right.
but
Just for accuracy terminology for the medical,
Fair enough, but yeah, it's what they were going with is entirely plausible. Whether that disorder would actually happen in an instance like this is probably debatable within the scientific community, the medical community. But again, given how linked we are as a society through internet, especially the younger generation, which in this show it was a bunch of high school girls on the high school like cheerleading team or something. It's entirely plausible and possible that this could happen. So, as Mole said, that was kind of genius how they linked everything in. But I still felt the execution was lacking a lot.
It was. The execution was lacking. I would link this. I would say this is, in terms of the premise, not everything though with how it was executed, just the premise. I would say this is the flip side to what Jim used to watch and liked about Revolution. I have given that a try, because Revolution shows the physical connections to all the stuff that society now relies on, like the physical thing of, okay, if you don't have a computer, you can't do this, you can't do that. It shows the physical side. This is doing the exact same thing, but it's the emotional side of the same thing of,
Right,
okay, now
mental.
you can't, now you're just speaking to your friends or sharing experience with your friends, you could suddenly get this type of psychological thing. And like I said, personally, I love that premise. I really love that premise. Out of the Amazon stuff we've watched so far, this has probably the best premise.
Yes,
But
I
the
can
shit
agree
is
with that.
but the shit is execution. That's a damn shame. It's a shame when the bad things happen to great premise. But I don't know if what Jim thinks about what you just said.
No, you make a valid point. Is that it's sort of something that in Revolution they focused a lot on how would this how would this affect people in a tangible manner. Like one of the main things that they highlight early on in season one is there's a character named Maggie who, spoiler alert from a year and a half ago, dies pretty early on. But her things that she has is her old
And
iPhone.
spoiler alert, just a year later, so did the show.
Ah.
I'm sorry, Jim. That's mean. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But I will say to our viewers who haven't seen Revolution, totally check out Jim's review for it on our channel, I should say.
Yes, I reviewed the pilot. I will be going back to review the entire two-season series as a whole at some point when I have time.
Nice.
But that aside, yeah, and one of the things they highlighted was that in this world with, if you haven't seen Revolution, there is no power. All electricity and power has been removed by a force that they don't understand until later. That's some science stuff that could feasibly happen, but is not likely. But anyway, there's no power, and so she carries around her old iPhone. And at one point, the character of Aaron asks Maggie, "Why do you still carry that around? There's no power and everything. Why do you keep it with you?" And she says it's because, and mind you, the show is taking place 15 years after the power disappeared and the blackout, as they called it. So there's been 15 years without power. She's still carrying an electronic device that hasn't worked in 15 years. And she says it's because somewhere in this thing are the only photos that I have of my children, whom I will probably never see again. And it kind of makes you think that, in this day and age, probably 90% of the pictures that anybody takes, nobody's using film and getting developed anymore. It's all digital. It's all on Facebook. It's all on Instagram. It's all online.
Yeah.
If we lost the power, all those precious memories of life and things that we have would be gone. They'd be inaccessible. And it's sort of kind of reflecting on that particular aspect. And this show, like Will mentioned, is kind of the opposite of, okay, that would happen. But if that sort of thing happened, if there was no power, this sort of thing happened, how, because we're so connected by the electronics and this is what would happen to us. Physically we'd be very sad and emotional, this sort of thing. But at the same time, Hysteria is looking at, okay, we're so connected to this whole thing. How is that affecting us on a psychological and a subconscious level in ways that we don't even cognitively realize? How is that affecting us, and what could that potentially lead to down the line?
Yep, which we've all seen examples of that online. Like, people will do online petitions and everyone's rallying for it. Yes, we want to see this. Or someone will update their Facebook status with something sad, and suddenly everyone's like, oh, and you feel, a lot of people do feel emotionally connected to that, which, great concept, but yeah, everything else. I like how we talk about the concept because it's the one good thing.
Okay.
Mo, imagine this.
The one concept is one good.
Yeah, if you want a good concept, watch this thing. And one thing I do kind of disagree with Mole on, which we haven't touched on, is I do feel that some of the acting is actually pretty good, especially of the quote-unquote main characters, the girls. I felt they all did a great job.
To be fair, I said the acting was good on the main character of the Doctor.
Yeah, the
blonde
Doctor.
Doctor.
I
just didn't like some of. I just didn't like some of the other ones. I felt they went overboard.
Yeah, some of the adults kind of went a little overboard, but I felt the girls did a good job. But imagine this, if you will, Mole. Take this concept for a TV show, give it to Joss Whedon.
I wouldn't like that.
Really? You don't think he could do a good job with this concept?
He might do, but in my opinion, Joss Whedon's shows are more about like something someone can physically fight, like enemies in space or the enemies of Dollhouse or the enemies of Buffy, like vampires and stuff. I'd feel something like this. The way it's set up, what they should possibly do is, if they went with writers and stuff, I'd give it to the people who made House. They know how to make medical dramas that have hour-long premises that drag on about what the mystery is. They know how to do this.
That's
They
true.
did it for 8 years.
It's ironic you say that because I was looking at some of the comments and some people were mentioning that it felt like this was an episode of House without the resolution. But they were waiting for House to walk in and give the answer of how to solve the disease and cure everybody.
Actually,
But,
you know who I would want to take this? The people who did Hannibal. Because this is a very, like, it's a psychological thriller, and come on, you don't get much more psychological than Hannibal friggin' Lecter.
True.
Indeed.
But
or maybe Norman Bates.
that could work too.
Yeah.
That could work too.
Yeah, Bates Motel.
Yeah.
But
I haven't seen that show yet. I need to. I just haven't, because to me it was a complete travesty to give Alfred Hitchcock's work to someone else, because it's fucking Hitchcock.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the other thing about this show, like I said, I felt like my other concern the concern I had with the premise primarily was that, number one, it felt like, conversion disorder is certainly a thing, but it felt like, somebody read this one story about the group of schoolgirls this happened to. This is partially based on true events, we didn't mention that. The part about some schoolgirls coming down with this was true, and not in this way though. And I feel like, okay, conversion disorder is certainly a real thing. It is a disorder and a medical thing that should be taken seriously. And I feel like the problem is, as happens so often in media, that by pushing this show forward with the whole tie to the social media aspect, when people people are going to read that it's a real disease, they're going to automatically think that the social media thing is real too. And I always don't like that when shows take something that's partially true and then add falsehoods to it, because all that does is confuse the hell out of everybody. And then people start thinking that some of the false parts are true, and especially when you're doing something as serious as a legitimate medical disorder, that's A, bad for potential diagnosis of the actual disorder, and B, that's kind of offensive to anybody that has it or has gone through it.
Possibly. I say possibly because I know, like, loads of the cases on House were based on real cases because they researched that. Also, a load of horror films do this, they say based on a true story. We know it's not. It's just a case of one person said it happened to them, thus they can claim it's true. And
you're telling me a bunch of teenagers with the camera didn't really find a witch in the woods?
I'm not about that one. I'm about the ones that actually are based on true stories. And it turns out, like Exorcist, where they've changed the sex of the person, and they went way too different with what the actual stories say happened and stuff. And Amityville, where it turns out the family made it up, which I love Amityville, but it works sometimes. Like Titanic. Titanic is one of the greatest films of all time. I'm sorry, those two couples were not actually on the main couple was not actually on the Titanic. The main couple were made up, and the whole story was made up. The only thing they had in common was they were on a boat and it sank. But which works with this, which I feel they can drag this on, and maybe if they solve it by the end of, if they did a season, solve it by the end of the season, and maybe next season go into another like sort of mental illness that could be spread in a similar way and just keep going that way and stuff, which I think it could kind of work. Or you could even drag this out a few seasons or so. It could possibly work.
Yeah, Marcus had some concerns about whether or not this premise, how long this premise would work before people got sick of it. I made the point that, well, it seemed to me from this pilot that, okay, a bunch of girls are in the hospital with this particular disorder, but the show is not about this particular group of high school girls. They are just there for the sake of triggering the plot, I think. I think the primary plot is going to be what happened to Mina Savari and her dead sister and her brother who's in jail for murdering her sister, but they're hinting probably didn't actually do it, and who's probably the only guy who understands what the fuck's going on. And basically what happened, 20 years ago, whatever it was back then, that's going to be, I think, the primary driving factor of the series. And it's going to be, discovering what happened back then and how does that affect the present. I think that's going to be the driving force. And it's very easy to build a show where there's a mystery of something that happened in the past and then unraveling it slowly. Hell, there's been countless shows built on that exact premise of unraveling things that happened in the past that people don't know about or remember happening in the past.
Yep, or hell, Arrow is famous for doing 2 shows at once because it shows him on the island and then him in modern day, and it works. But the the thing with the show is that, yeah, I don't think the girls are the main focus of the story. I think it's the Doctor and the people around them, and the dealing with what happens in widespread panic like this, aka hysteria, which is in the title.
True.
Fair enough.
So we talk about the
Otherwise, I think it'd be called viral or something.
true. It's more about yeah. I think the idea is that, as is mentioned, the disorder itself, the mass psychogenic illness, is often referred to as mass hysteria, hence the name, I think. But at any rate, we've talked a lot about the premise here. Why don't we? Apparently, I'm going to host this because Marcus is doing his job. Why don't we go ahead and talk about the things that we did not?
Shut the hell up.
Well, fine. Go ahead and move us to the next segment then.
Well, there's not much else to talk about. We talked about the concept of it. We've talked about the acting. There really isn't much of a soundtrack to speak of.
I didn't say.
We haven't talked much about the acting. Just me and you touched upon it for like a sentence.
That's what I'm saying. Is we got a lot of the negative stuff that we kind of do need to talk about, even though we were trying to, of course, be as positive as we can in our reviews. And that's it. There were a lot of issues with this, and I think a big part of it was they tried to put a lot in this, and it's similar problem to Hand of God, which you reviewed a few weeks ago. You can go back and watch that. Is that they tried to put a lot in here to make the show seem like there was a lot going on that they could develop into a full series, and the problem is it made it look kind of like a clusterfuck. Like, aside from the main plot line of what's going on at the hospital, and even the thing in the past was fine, but then at the same time you've got other shit. Okay, what's going on with the guy that ended up in the hospital with the tattoo that made the video? Is there some kind of secret cult, like they're hinting at like some kind of demon possession thing? And then we gotta have this side plot about the main sick chick's sister who's fucking a married cop. Yeah, we need to know about that. That's important. Just blackmailing him and shit with cell phone videos that she made of them having sex in the abandoned snow globe factory. Which, what the fuck is with the abandoned snow globe factory? That's like a weird place.
To be fair, I think the sister kind of ties into this because it's the spread of videos and stuff like causing it, and she's taking videos of him, she's wrapping him up into it, and what she does with those videos could dramatically affect the course of this story.
This is true.
But yeah, the other stuff was way too. They did do way too much. My problem is with it was, like I mentioned, like the pacing. It was slow into some parts to the point of being boring, but not in a good way. Like some shows are slow and it feels good and you're hooked on it. This just felt like they were dragging it out for the sake of dragging it out, and really awkward parts. And suddenly other parts were suddenly sped up too fast, and you're like, wait, what the hell? Like, and my problem with the acting was, for example, like when they're in the car and the two girls are talking to each other. One of them, when they're reading their lines, it just felt so fucking bored, like she didn't want to be there. I got, like, you could see her eyes and stuff. She was just like, yeah, this is how I am talking to you. And it's like, really, do your job, act. You're sounding bored shitless, like you're absolutely bored with the script. If you don't enjoy what you're doing or get wrapped up into it, we're not going to get wrapped up into you. It felt like I was watching someone go through the motions of actually reading the script.
Mm-hmm. That's fair enough. I didn't notice that, but fair enough.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's a little different, but I mean, we're all different. Other people may have noticed different things, or some people may have liked that. That's just how I felt. And some of the acting, I just felt was ridiculous. Like, oh yeah, now we can suddenly go break into breakdancing. When they broke into breakdancing, it was so randomly fast. It was like, what? And then with some of the acting, it was like all over the place. Like some of them were bored shitless, but then other ones were overacting. It was like they saw the other people were bored shitless and decided to do their job and act for them and themselves at the same time. And it's like, no, you can't double act just because someone is underact. No, brain. But I don't know. What about you, Marky?
Yeah, and why not? That's how Nicolas Cage makes up for everybody else in all of his movies.
Yeah, this.
To be fair, Nicolas Cage has done some great films.
No, he has.
But yeah, this series could use, the show could use a lot of polish. Yeah, on the acting front and as well as just on the execute. I can't harp on it enough. Reevaluate the script, reevaluate the execution of this thing because it's horrible.
It is.
It's a great premise, but
It is.
because like I said, I don't think I had as much problems with the acting as you did, but you probably noticed things that I didn't, like that scene in the car. But I don't know. I thought it was
I will
okay.
admit
Yeah, there were some.
Oh, I was going to say, I will admit the only reason I was going on about the premise at the beginning of this hour was just because I've. It's very rare that you walk away from something feeling like, at least, I mean, this is how I felt when I described it to Marcus before we went to record, of why I loved this premise. Of, it's very rare you walk away from something thinking, I fucking love that. I'm really excited about that premise. And you're like, oh yeah, but everything else is shit. Damn you! And it's like I was so excited by that. Yeah, I realized I may have gone on too much about that, and I'll apologize to our viewers because I don't normally like to do that. It's just that was just something I was really excited for, to get something that genius.
Yes. But
And in all fairness, I think our audience is used to us talking about things that have occasionally decent premises, but that are executed like shit because we host WXR every week.
Ouch.
Yep, and they've probably seen your reviews.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else you guys want to talk about with this show because, like I said, as I was alluding to earlier, there really isn't much of a soundtrack to speak of. There is kind of a theme song, but
Yeah.
it's a TV show.
I'm gonna say I think part of the reason, like we mentioned with Hand of God and with Really, although we touched on it more with Really, but I think I'm gonna have to give it more of a leeway because I think part of the problem may be the people writing it or directing it or something may be used to doing a TV show, but they may not be used to the digital format with no ad breaks to do the big explosions at that right moment where you know the adverts are going to go, so you want to keep people hooked. And also, so you don't have that, and also, like that article when I showed you before, Marcus, people hate it when they get spoilers. So nowadays, a load of shows, especially digital content made for binge watching, they try to put so much in there that it's hard to just spoil it on like a tweet or one single Facebook post because there's so much going on that when you watch it all back to back to back to back to back, you find so many little loopholes, like, oh, this connected over here and this connected back in this episode, which this could totally do. It's just it needs to be done better.
Yeah, you can't pace it like a marathon. It's not going to work that way. And unfortunately, spoilers are always going to be there. And like I said, you can't pace it like a marathon in an effort to curb spoiling. Because when you pace it like that, you're going to lose people, and it's going to feel like a jumbled hot mess.
I would partially agree with that. I would say you may lose some people. However, the trends do show that, like, for example, and I've done this myself. If I'm going to watch a show on, say, Amazon Prime or on my Netflix, I will sit down and I will watch the shit out of that show on the run, and that's what people mainly do on there. That's their biggest audience, is the ones doing the box set thing of that's all the show they're watching in one go, to be like, I need to get through this shit. Yeah, oh yeah, this is awesome. And that's their main thing. Like, TV people will go for the ones watching weekly. The other ones try to go for the marathon because that's sort of their audience. You know what I mean? Like, you have to understand both audiences. Like, I'd rather have some TV shows where you didn't have to end on a big moment right before the ad break, or you didn't need the pacing of some TV shows. I understand that, but I wish it wasn't quite like that, because it feels a little disorientated sometimes when you go back and watch it on DVD. But just the people watching on DVD aren't their main audience, it's the weekly viewers. On this case, it's the ones that watch it regularly are the main viewers, and the weekly people aren't.
True, but even with that as your focus, you still have to pace it properly, because if you pace an episode like you'd be sprinting a marathon, there's going to be fatigued by the end of the episode, especially if you're going to do, like, say, an hour-long episode, which would condense down to about 50 minutes when you take ads out, and you're doing it 50 minutes on the run, no ad breaks, and you pace it like that, you're going to wear people out. People are going to miss things, and things aren't going to make sense. You still have to pace it properly. Also, by throwing in that much stuff, because, we don't want spoilers, so we're going to throw everything at you, so you can't possibly spoil everything. In my opinion, you can, and it's probably happened where you hurt what's there in doing that because you don't give enough time to properly develop what's there.
I agree.
And I think that's part of the issue with this is, like, especially with this one, is they didn't give enough time to properly develop, in my opinion, what it is they were trying to get across. Because you got one thing out of it, which is probably what they were trying to get across. Jim got something close, but he got something else as the main, and I got something completely different to the two of you.
Yep,
because I went into it saying, okay, it's called Hysteria, and here's what the show is going to be about, their description and stuff, and then I watched it and I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, what you just showed had nothing to do with what you said the show was going to be about. What the fuck?
Oh, you must have been pissed when those credits came up on the Neverending Story. But no, I understand, and I do understand the pacing part as well, Marcus. It's with some shows like this where they do it like that, it's because they're building to something bigger as a whole, and while the pilot may feel off, the next episode they can relax a bit because they've already got you hooked on the show, which is what they're trying to do, and they can slowly start to intertwine for stuff to wrap up for like the 13 episodes. Like, for example, the Marvel one, which I will be reviewing, audience, for the Comic Zone when it comes out of all the Marvel Netflix exclusive shows. They mentioned they're filming the Daredevil one, and they're planning to film it as a 13-hour movie, and then split it up into 13 parts, so it's each episode. And I'm like, that makes sense, because I'll be honest, when that comes out, I'm gonna sit down. I'm on one of my days off, and I got like 12 hours to sit down and just do shit. I'm gonna sit down, and just lose myself, and just watching all the fucking that for 13 hours straight. I could totally see me doing that. Because the Daredevil series does sound cool, and then I'll do the same for each one, the Marvel one that follows, and the Defenders. I can just see me doing that. Just, yes, watch.
And thus, for those weeks, we will not have Chris the Mole on Around the Pound or WXR.
You will? What have you done on Around the Pound? Well, that's funny you should ask. I was watching Daredevil. Oh, and what else? I was watching Daredevil. it'll be like just on one of the days off. The other ones I'll still like game and shit.
Mm-hmm. But Jim, what's your opinion on what we've been discussing?
Yeah, I agree that it's a kind of thing where, I mean, everything is open to interpretation, and I think in this case, because a lot of what was put out there was kind of vague, there was a lot of room for that interpretation. Because, while they did mention, okay, this is the name of the medical disorder, and and whatnot, they kind of left it open to vague. Okay, exactly how does this thing work and affect these girls? Exactly why are some girls affected and some not? Exactly what does the sister's interest in the married cop have to do with this? Exactly what does Mina Savari's past involving her dead sister and her brother who's in jail for the murder of said sister have to do with this? They left a lot of different angles open to explore, but I think they went too much. Leaving the Mina Savari thing open was fine, but they didn't develop a lot of the other aspects, and because a lot of it felt kind of vague, it felt like you were watching, like I said, watch this episode of House, where none of them really knows what's going on, and House is supposed to come in at the end and explain it all, so the audience knows what the fuck they just watched for 45 minutes. So that didn't happen here. So it felt like it was a lot of, okay, we're seeing what's going on, but we're not really totally understanding what's going on because you're not giving us the details we need to understand what's going on because you're trying to grab too many main plot points instead of taking a few of them and developing them all the way.
Yeah, which makes sense. Which, like I said, my theory with that is it's going to be a case of when all the episodes are out, this will feel like the first 13 minutes, say, of a House episode, and then the next one will feel like the next 15 minutes or whatever, and then the next one the next 15 minutes, and then the last episode will be the resolution. But it's designed for like a big marathon viewing. That's the only thing I can think of. I may be wrong, and if I am, hey, it's been known to happen. I once thought I was wrong. Turns out I was mistaken. But yeah, basically it means that I'm thinking that's what they're going to do, of just spread this out. You know what I mean? So that they've placed this in the pilot, so they've got the seeds. Then episode 2 onwards, when they know they've got their audience and their audience is going to be watching all of these in one go, they can start to slowly make those seeds grow throughout. It just doesn't work if the acting's bad.
You know, now that you mention how the digital series and stuff works, you know what I'm realizing? I'm realizing this Amazon pilot program kind of doesn't work for this format.
Yep, it doesn't. It only works for some types of shows, like sitcoms and comedies.
Exactly. Well, and it's because of exactly what you pointed out, of the fact that this isn't a TV show. For a TV show, pilot works because the pilot is supposed to be what sells the network on your show. So you have to put in there, basically within your first episode, what the show is going to be about, what the hook is, and you got to get your audience hooked on it. But with something like this, because as you pointed out, which I hadn't thought about, with the digital model, it's not about getting that hook in the first show. It's about designing a show that someone can binge watch or marathon watch. It's about designing the show so that you get the hook over like 14, 20 episodes, however many episodes your show is going to be. And because of that, if all you're showing to your audience to try to get them hooked is just with the first episode of that, like you pointed out with the House example, it's only going to feel like the first 10, 15 minutes of House, which, I'm sorry, but the first 10, 15 minutes of the show isn't enough for me to say, okay, I want to see another episode of the show. You got to show me an entire friggin' episode before I can say I want to see another episode of the show. And I think that's kind of hurting this because from my understanding, this pilot program is them putting out pilots and sometimes unfinished pilots to see if there's an interest for it. But how can there be an interest for it if your show isn't formatted to take advantage of a pilot? If that makes sense.
It's because it's both. With the pilots,
Can't be both.
With the pilots, it's both. They've got those hooks in there. Because let's face it, if this had been written better, and maybe if the pacing was just slightly better, all those questions Jim asked of, wait, what does the sister have to do with this? Where's this going? What's going to happen with this? They're all questions that you ask weekly on shows. Like Jim, you used to watch Lost. How many questions did you have going into with different episodes of Lost when it's split off and make you ask like 10 fucking questions before the next episode? The only reason why I think this one doesn't is just because the acting and pacing was slightly off. But I feel if it had been executed better, what's there is perfect to be the best of both worlds, if that makes sense, of being enough hook to get people in there, but also being enough for the marathon watchers when they do it. Like, they did a show which you should check out on there originally called Alpha House with John Goodman in there, and it's all about the Senate politics and stuff. First episode, brilliant episode, knocked it straight the fuck out the park, but made it so I wanted to see a lot more. And when they released the series and it had the budget for the rest of the series, because that's what these are for, basically they released them all in one go, and I sat down and watched them all, and it was damn good. It was fucking awesome. Because one thing they haven't done this pilot season, which is disappointing, is we haven't had as many unfinished pilots. Because last time there was some, like, I think Ambots, or however you call it, or Androids. I think Androids was one. I know they had the Wizard of Oz one and stuff. A load of the other ones last time were unfinished to the point where you'd watch it and it'd be cool and you'd see like an animation or something. Then the next scene, CGI or some of the effects would be missing, or it'd be like just a storyboard telling you what was happening with the people reading the voices, because they needed to get the budget to complete that by having the pilot go through.
Fair enough.
I also feel like there's no kid shows this time, which is disappointing because they've had a few decent kid ones come through in the last couple. They've had a couple of decent kid shows.
Fair enough. But
is
I
Jim
would just
falling
like to
asleep?
say that I hope not. But
I think he has. I can hear him asleep.
Jim. Wow, he fell asleep.
No, I'm right here. I just don't have much else to add to that.
Oh, all we can hear is.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to be really so heavy on you.
Yeah. When you weren't saying anything, when we were asking if you were asleep for like a while, and it seemed like you were asleep. It's cool.
But yeah, I just wanted to say that as of now, having seen 3 of them, and then seeing the varied strengths and weaknesses of each of them, and having discussed them with you guys, I think of the 3, the one that I would probably most look forward to seeing a second episode of right now, and we'll do a final one at the end when we do all 5. But the one I would most look forward to seeing another episode of is the first one, Hand of God. And I think, despite the fact that, yeah, the pacing was completely off in that one too, it was way too long, as we said, but it was executed well. It had not a very good concept, but it was executed well. And it tied together things that needed to be tied together to make the concept cohesive, or to make the show cohesive, but at the same time left you with enough questions to hook you in and make you want to see the next episode, like especially the ending. And it felt like a pilot, unlike this one. This one didn't feel like a pilot to me, but Hand of God felt like a pilot, but at the same time, now looking back at it after having realized the whole digital format thing, it also felt like the first part in a series that you could just sit here and binge watch.
It did have that. For me personally, it's the show I'm most looking forward to so far is still really.
Really.
I thought it was so brilliantly done, and that had no pacing issues for me much. I think it had like a tiny bit, if that.
Yeah.
It felt like a pilot, and it left with that cliffhanger of, oh my god, what the hell's gonna happen now that he's basically been sucked off by his friend's wife.
Yeah.
I want to see what happens with that. What the fuck? And that felt like a weekly show, but yet also felt like something I'd so binge watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if Hand of God had been paced better and condensed into an actual episodic time frame, I think that probably would have been the strongest one so far. But it'll be interesting to see what we think of the other 2, and then maybe at the end we'll give which one we liked the best of the 5. But I just thought I'd bring that up now since it pertained to our discussion about this one.
It did, which is fair enough. And hey, that's the good thing with these pilots. If you go back and you watch any of these pilots viewers as well, make sure you go onto Amazon.com after you've seen them and do the rating thing, because that's what they go for. Your feedback on each one of these pilots is what's going to get this show good, or what's going to get this show not good, but it's what's going to get this show picked up. That's the word. It's going to get this show picked up or not. And last time they made some one of the not the last one, the one before that, because like I said, they tweet yeah. The last time when they first started to do this, there were some really great shows there, and unfortunately, loads of people didn't give them a feedback or didn't watch each one and grade each one. People would only watch like a handful, like one or maybe 2, and that would be it, and ignore the other ones or not even bother doing the rating for the ones that they had seen, and that hurt those shows, and some of them didn't get picked up, which is a shame. Like Zombieland. Zombieland was awesome. They did a pilot of Zombieland based on the film. It was good, and yeah, some people didn't give it a fair chance because like it doesn't feel like, it's not quite like this film, which a TV show isn't. And a lot of people that did like it didn't rate it, so it didn't get picked up, which was a damn shame because that was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Is there anything else we should talk about with this pilot?
How about your hair? Have you been doing something different with it this week?
Well, yes,
Look
as a
like
matter of fact, I just got a haircut yesterday.
I thought so. It's looking extra buoyancy. Like I just want to reach out and just pat it a little bit, like a freshly wet dog. Ah. Oh yeah, the pilots. But no.
Yes, Jim, you've been quiet. Is there anything you wanted to add? Anything you wanted to discuss about this pilot episode? Guess not.
I guess not. Fair enough. Assuming he's still there.
Hope so. He's the one running this. But yeah, I think.
I was seeing if I would wake Jim up.
Jim.
I didn't go anywhere. I'm right here.
Ah, there you are. Yeah, we were asking you. Jeff asked you a
asked you.
question and was asking you your thing.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was asking if you had anything else you wanted to say about the about this pilot. Any opinions? Anything else you want to discuss?
Just that I think it certainly has potential that it could go somewhere, but it needs to be fleshed out, have some pieces taken out that aren't working, expand out what you have so there's not so much in each episode, and have each episode a little more focused so that you can really, audience can understand what they're saying and what's going on, because that's just going to get them excited for the show. The problem is you're trying to suck them in with hype and, all the flashy, the seriousness of all this, that all it's a horror, all pandemic, all what's going to happen. You're trying to get them in with all the action, the flashiness, and that's not going to support your whole series, nonstop until, whenever you get there. That's not going to keep it going. I mean, no show can pull it off. Even Lost was, they crashed on an island, what's going to happen? But after a while, it was more about, these characters developing as people in this weird place rather than just, they crashed on an island.
You know what I reckon they should have done? I
big
flashy musical. What do y'all reckon they should have done?
What's that, Mole?
A big flashy musical number?
Well, yes, but I think they shouldn't have mentioned the Doctor's past at all. And make her the main character. Obviously, do the focus bits, but don't mention her past at all. And make the pilot episode all about the social commentary. Make it what it should have been and what it seemed like they were trying to focus on for at least the first half of the episode of the whole internet thing and our society's reliance on the internet, how that affects us mentally and emotionally, and about this disease, and then reveal later in later episodes the history of this doctor, reveal that she's got this history with this disease and stuff like that. I think that would have been far more effective, because then you don't introduce into already a really turmoiled mix of, okay, so this doctor has his past, what the hell does this have to do with anything? Because that, to me, of anything and everything in this pilot, felt the most out of place, because it's like, okay, you've connected kind of other things, even though the sister, basically boning the married cop and all that stuff was kind of out of nowhere. It at least fit, kind of, and it at least made sense in the grander scheme of the episode, because it seemed like a bulk of the episode was focused on these girls, the internet, and this disease. And also there's still the mystery of, and I didn't really realize this until I was thinking about it like today, the overarching mystery here is, why did the younger sister go into convulsions in the first place? What caused that? Because that's the root of this whole thing, because she was the first one to do it, and then because of her, everybody else, got sick, and they never really did divulge what it is that caused her to do that. And I feel that mystery should have been at least the focus of the pilot. And then through the pilot, you bring in the doctor, so you get her involved, so you make her like the main character. Once you've established her as the main character and you've fleshed out some of the other stuff that you've introduced in this episode, then you start introducing bit by bit. Oh, by the way, she also has a past with this, and there's a reason why she's the one involved with this. I think that would have made for a much more better paced and much more interesting story, and I think that would have given the pilot the hook it would need to be a pilot. But I don't know if you guys agree.
I could agree with that. I could agree with some of that.
I
Jim?
can agree
But
with that.
should we do our ratings?
Sure, why not?
Sure, and since Jim spoke the least, let's let Jim kick that off. Final thoughts and ratings, Jim.
I think I had quite a bit of speaking, but anyway. Overall, I already gave my final thoughts on it. I felt like if they took a little bit out, they fleshed it out a little bit, and they had a little less in each episode and went a little more into detail on the things they did have, it would make it a little easier for the audience to follow, a little easier to get into, and make it an overall better show. Overall, I'd say to give this pilot a 6. It's got good parts to work with. It just needs to figure out which parts are good and which parts are not, and it needs to just kind of bring it all together. I feel like they kind of they got to get this together, and they just kind of put a lot, throw a lot out there, and it didn't quite fit together.
Fair enough,
Yep.
Mole. Oh, Jim. Oh, no, you did do it. Never mind. Mole, go ahead.
Fair enough. I was going to say, personally, like I mentioned, I really loved the premise. A load of other stuff I didn't like, but I feel like given a full season, all of that stuff will be fleshed out. It makes me want to see more of it because I do want to see where this goes and how it's building up and see what the hell happens. So I'm going to give it an 8.
Fair enough. You've all kind of heard my final thoughts on it as I rambled on before we did this. But as with Mole, I think it has a very good premise. I think it's got a couple things that could be the premise with the overarching premise of the social commentary. And I think if they focus more on that and make this series about that social commentary, I think it could be awesome. And as Mole said, it's got potential. If it can get through the pacing issues and get through the throwing too much crap at you issues, I think this could be a good series. So on that, I'll give it a 7. It's not terrible. It's not one that really makes me want to see the next episode, but it's one I'd be willing to see the next episode. If that makes sense. So yeah, 7 out of 10.
Okay.
So that'll do it for us this week on Hysteria. Feel free to leave comments, ratings. What, the show?
Yeah.
Yeah, the show was a little bit weird too. It was kind of fucked up. I guess when you're dealing with a topic like this, it kind of has to be fucked up. And let's face it, as we all know, the internet is for porn.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I said to Marcus. I didn't think it was fucked up. Which may just be me, I don't know. But I didn't think it was that fucked up. I just thought it was, I don't know, bad in parts, but great in other parts.
Yeah. I thought the first half of it was kind of fucked up, but then it got better once they started trying to link everything up. Once the doctor showed up and stuff like that, and yeah, I know it's kind of bad of me to say, but it got better once the girls got hospitalized. It wasn't quite as fucked up. I was like, okay, yeah, this is more kind of normal now. I can get behind this. Yes, I know. Because some of the stuff they did in the beginning of the episode, oh my god, that was completely fucked up. But
fair enough.
But yeah, like as with any of these pilots, give them a watch, rate them appropriately as to how you feel about them. And if you wish to open discussions with us, feel free. Comment below on the website. We will happily talk to you about this stuff. And hopefully you've enjoyed our ramblings tonight. For Chris the Mole and James Phoenix, I was your host, Marcus Shadow. And join us next week for Drumroll Jim.
Jim, stash.
Ha. But yes, join us next week for the 4th Amazon Prime pilot, in which we're going to take a look at the 80s coming-of-age comedy. I don't know the name of it in front of me. Shit.
Wow. It's Red
I know.
Oaks, Jim.
Red Oaks. Thank you. I didn't have the name in front of me ready for that. I thought I had the window open. I did not. I must have closed it inadvertently. But yes, the 80s coming of age comedy Red Oaks featuring Paul Reiser, which should be awesome.
It should be.
So thank you. Have a good night, everyone.